Hi, I'm Barton Crumb, and we're going to talk about the European Union and in specifics the Central European Union today. So first, where is Central Europe? So it's actually that area in blue right there. It's a pretty good portion of Europe. And in particular, we're talking about Switzerland, Austria, Slovakia, and Poland. As you can see, Poland has the largest geographical presence among these countries, the four we're talking about. Meaning that it has the most land occupation. Although it's important to note that all the countries are part of the European Union except for Switzerland, and this will come up throughout the presentation when I refer to the EU. Next, we're going to talk about the population. So each circle lists the country's name, then the population total, followed by the country's comparison to the rest of the world for its population. So Switzerland has a population total of 8.3 million, and it's ranked 99th in world standings based on the populations of it compared to other countries. As you can see, Poland, which once again had the most landscape, has the biggest population by far within these countries with 38.4 million. The other countries are fairly small in comparison. To put things into perspective, the U.S. has a population of about 329 million people, and it's the third most populated country in the world. So these are a lot smaller than the U.S. So this slide is actually talking about the trade and the GDP, which is the gross domestic product. And much like the last slide, each circle has the country's name followed by their GDP, and the country's comparison to the rest of the world for their GDP is below that. So as you can see, once again, Poland is exponentially larger than the other three countries. You can see, though, that while each country besides Poland was ranked from 96 and up, so 96 to 100 and beyond that, for population totals on the last slide in comparison to the rest of the world, these countries are only rated between 39 and 69. So while they might not be the biggest in the world, they're still producing a large amount of GDP. And that's important for an organization looking to market in these countries. They might not have the biggest populations, but they have very strong economies. So let's compare this to the US. So to put this into context, if you took all four countries and summed their GDP and then multiplied it by 8, you still would not reach the GDP of the US. So while these countries do have active economies and imports and export systems, they are not anywhere near the strength and size of the U.S., and the U.S. actually just recently fell to number 2 behind China. So now we're going to continue this talk on trade and look at each country with its top 2 imports and exports and what percentage of each is due to the United States. So machinery is a huge import and export for each of these 4 countries. An interesting thing to note is that a lot of the country's top 2 imports are actually their top 2 exports as well. So the U.S. accounts for 12.3% of Switzerland's imports, while it is not in the top 5 for the other countries. And the other country's number 1 importer is actually Germany. And that makes sense because Germany is a very large economic system right there by them in Europe. As for exports, Switzerland exports 7.9% of its products to the U.S., and Austria exports 6.3% of its products to the U.S. The U.S. is not in the top 6 countries that Poland and Slovakia export to, and both of those countries actually export the most of their products to Germany. So now let's look at the economic environment of each country. The chart shows the country, the average household income per capita per year in US dollars, and the income distribution within these 4 countries. So these 4 numbers are only for these 4 countries for the income distribution. As you can see, Switzerland and Austria are very comparable in average income in the 30,000s, while there's a gap, and Poland and Slovakia are comparable to each other in around 20,000. It's important to note that for each of these countries, there is a considerable gap between the richest and poorest citizens, with the top 20% earning about 4 to 5 times as much as the bottom 20%. And as for the general state of each economy, Switzerland ranked as the most competitive economy in the world according to the Global Competitiveness Report of 16 in 2017. It has a prosperous and modern market economy with low unemployment, a highly skilled labor force, and a per capita GDP among the highest in the world. Austria has a well-developed market economy with skilled labor force and high standard of living. Its economy features a large service sector, a sound industrial sector, and a small but highly developed agricultural sector. Poland has the sixth largest economy in the EU with a policy of economic liberalization. It was actually the only EU country to avoid a recession during the 2008-2009 economic slowdown. And that's a huge deal. That shows how strong the economy actually is. Slovakia's economy has had a slow start after its separation from the Czech Republic in 1993, but it's now on a path of strong growth. It has a small, open economy driven mainly by automobile and electronic exports. So as you can see, each country is either on its way to a strong developed economy or it's already reached there and is surpassing what it was before, and it's getting stronger each day. As for the financial environment, Austria and Slovakia both use the euro as their currency, while Switzerland and Poland use their own country's currency. As for exchange rates, the US dollar is going to stretch a lot farther in Poland than in Switzerland, Austria, or Slovakia. In those countries, you're almost getting one of their currency for every US dollar. But say you have $100 in US dollars and you go to Austria, you'll have about 85 euros. But if you go to Poland, you'll have 374 zlotys. The U.S. currency seems to be holding strong in these countries, with this slight exception to Poland, which is important when an organization is starting new somewhere. They want their currency to be strong, and that's something we're seeing here. As for the political environment, all four countries have republic government types with civil law systems, and as three of them are actually part of the EU, so there's tariff-free access to the EU for most of them, and then there's no significant trade barriers for any of them. And all four actually are part of the U.S. visa system where people are able to work without a visa for 3 months. Now we're going into the cultural environment. Here we have the official languages and then the most common religions for each country. The German language can take you very far within this region. The most prominent religion throughout all of the region is Catholic. While other religions not listed here are certainly present, the ones listed here are the most common once again. I also included a picture of each country's flag. As you can see, red and white is a common theme throughout all of them. And these countries are a lot like the U.S. They have languages that are actually spoken here in the U.S. They're clearly not English, but they're common. And then their religion is also very common throughout the U.S. As for infrastructure, airplanes, trains, and cars are all used for transportation throughout the four countries. Not surprisingly, Poland has the largest number of airports and kilometers of railways. The railways connect the countries to many other countries throughout Europe and are often used for traveling. For comparison to the U.S. has 13,513 airports. The typical U.S. citizen is much more likely to use an airplane or a car for transportation as to the railway system, which is very common in Europe. As for communication measures within the country, there's telephones, broadcast media, broadband, and internet. They're all present throughout. Their countries are very industrialized and much like the U.S. when it comes to technology being present in typical households. So for the percent of each population with internet access in their household, Switzerland is the highest with a staggering 89.4%, and Poland is right below them with the lowest of these four countries with 73.3%. So internet is very prevalent within this industrialized countries. So what does this mean for marketing within these countries? It's important to note that the General Data Protection Regulation was set forth by the EU in 2018, and it sets firm guidelines for how data processors and storage organizations can release customer data. It restricts how much data will be accessible to digital markets and research companies. So any company that's looking to market in these countries must pay particular attention to the extensive laws surrounding data privacy. So here's some specific marketing info as to the U.S.'s presence in these countries. The U.S. is Switzerland's most important destination for foreign direct investment, and Switzerland actually ranks as the sixth largest foreign investor in the U.S. Swiss affiliates directly support 500,000 U.S. jobs. And the U.S. tends to use Switzerland as a springboard into the European market. So they'll set up shop in Switzerland and then spread out and increase their reach to the other countries within the European market. The U.S. is Austria's third largest trade partner. The U.S. is Poland's top non-EU investor, and Poland is the leading trade partner for the U.S. in East Central Europe. And the U.S. exports to Slovakia include energy equipment, medical equipment and supplies, electrical and electronic machinery and components, automotive parts and components, chemical products, and plastics. And we mentioned earlier their vehicle industry, and the U.S. actually imports from Slovakia are dominated by Volkswagen and Audi vehicles. So, should an organization think about investing there as a business alternative? And I say yes. It has a central location, which allows companies to make a presence within the EU and then spread if they'd like. The trade systems are already in place between the companies, so there's non-tariffs, and companies have been trading with them forever, and so those are already worked out and established. They have pretty strong currency exchange rates. They have a stable political climate with a culture much similar to ours. And they have strong infrastructure both within highways and the internet. So they're awesome. They're a great place to invest. But one con to it is a lot of other companies have already established themselves in these countries. So when an organization is thinking about spreading or investing in these countries, they need to take a look at what the market really looks like and if there's a presence available for them and if they can really tackle it and if people are going to buy their product. So next we're going to end with the references, and these are actually not in alphabetical order. They're listed in order that they were shown throughout these slides.